Welcome to Backstage with Geoffrey Morrissey. I'm your host, Geoffrey Morrissey. We're backstage here at the Paradise. I'm joined by Mike from Passenger. Mike, how are you today?
I'm very good. Yeah, how you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Doing well. It's unseasonably warm, which is always nice.
Yeah.
It was also unseasonably warm, if I'm remembering correctly, when you played Newport Folk this year, a little bit earlier. Such a cool festival, and it seemed like you were the hardest working guy there. So how was your Newport experience?
I loved it, man. I loved it. It was, it's a festival that obviously is pretty iconic. It's got such a rich history, and I think for any artist, it's a really special moment and a real privilege to be asked to play it. And yeah, it didn't let us down. It really lived up to expectation. I loved the gig, and yeah, I went busking in the afternoon as well. So it was a fantastic day actually. Yeah.
It was really nice because I missed your set 'cause I was doing some sort of press thing, and then I was standing around and I just sort of heard it in the distance, was able to wander over, which was really cool.
Cool.
I love that you still sort of stay with this busking thing. It's something that you do fairly often. If you could stumble upon anyone to see in that intimate of a setting, who would you want to see busk? Who would you want to throw a couple bucks into the guitar case for?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see. It'd be fantastic to see one of the old soul guys singing in that setting, Otis Redding or Sam Cooke or someone like that. I think they'd stop a couple of punters, I'd imagine. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, busking for me has always been. It's such an intrinsic part of what made Passenger work. So every couple of years we like to still get out and busk, and in the summer just gone we busked all the way through Europe. We must have done it like 15, 20 times, and it's just such a nice way of saying thank you to people. People who have bought the records, people who have bought tickets to come and see us at gigs. It's such a nice thing to be able to give back and give them a free gig in the street.
And it must be nice sort of as a rehearsal method too, to either check out new material or work stuff out.
Yeah, for sure. And also for me, it just kind of keeps me grounded and really sort of reminds me of where I've come from.
Of course. I am so impressed by your work ethic. I think I have this right. 6 albums in 5 years so far is what we're at right now.
Yeah, 6 albums in 5 years and 10 in total, So
10 in
yeah,
total.
it's a bit silly to be honest, but yeah, I just keep on writing songs, so I keep on recording them and then keep on touring them, So it's a crazy cycle that I'm sure will kind of slow down at some point.
Well, that was kind of going to be my question. I mean, the quality certainly isn't slipping, but how sustainable is it for you personally? This album cycles are a lot,
That's such a good question, and actually something that's sort of been quite relevant recently. It just gets to the point where it's so much fun touring. I love playing shows. I'm still as passionate as I ever was about it. I think what does slow you down, what does exhaust you, is all of the sort of travel and the airports and the delays and the, sorry to have to say it, but the bullshit that kind of surrounds this industry, So the shows, and then the gigs, I love them, but everything else is what kind of grinds you down a little bit after a while.
Yeah, and I'm interested too. I mean, obviously, part of the goal is you love making music. That's why you do it. But you beat Springsteen out for a #1 album in the UK. You've topped the charts. You've played big venues opening. You've done your own headlining tours. How has the goal kept evolving for you? Sort of because you've hit most milestones that anyone would reasonably be able to expect to hit. So
yeah, you're asking all the right questions. Yeah, it's a really good point. And especially coming from playing the street and busking, you don't think you're ever gonna hit any of these milestones, and so it gets to the stage where it's Passenger has become so much bigger and better than I ever thought it was going to. You do start to ask like, well, what next? What now? But one thing I'm sure is I'll always make music. I'll always make records. I want to do that forever. Whether I slow down with the touring a little bit, that's probably a realistic thing. Yeah, but we'll see. Certainly an exciting future either way.
I love the new album that we have out right now, Runaway. It sounds American has been something that I've heard so much, whether in the lyrics or the themes. That's sort of been one of the narratives that have surrounded this record. What does that mean for you, for something to sound American?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, my dad's from the States. He's from New Jersey, and so I grew up coming over to the States quite regularly, and I've got family all up and down the East Coast. So I've got like quite an emotional attachment to this place. But I think, I've always been obsessed with American music. I grew up on Simon and Garfunkel and Bruce Springsteen and James Taylor and people like that, and I think really, it's always been a massive influence in the way I write and produce music. But with this record, it just felt even more so, and I just really embraced that feeling, and we went all out to not just let it sound American, but all the videos we shot around the States and went on this big road trip, and so we really embraced Americana this time, yeah.
Well, and that's what I was going to get to next. It was a perfect segue of, so the album starts with the studio versions of all the songs, then flips the sequencing, so the last is first, live versions of all the songs in different cities. One, I mean, that must have taken an incredible attention to detail in the sequencing, which I'm very interested in. But also, how did you pair each song with each city?
Yeah, so some of them were really obvious. There's a song about Detroit on the record. There's a song about Yellowstone National Park. There's a song that I wrote about my family from New Jersey. So some of them really kind of were obvious, and the others we sort of left a lot of it to fate. As I said, we went on this big road trip. There were 4 of us, and we were just traveling around the States. And for a lot of those live versions, it was just a matter of, hang on, stop the car. Go back. That was beautiful. Let's just go and film and record something there. And I think that's part of the charm of these recordings, that they're really spontaneous, they're really heartfelt. Sometimes when you're in the studio, it can feel a little bit sterile, or you're not quite in the mood, whatever. It's hard not to be in the mood when you're surrounded by giant redwoods, or on a rooftop in Manhattan or whatever. It really kind of I don't know, it just busted the recording process wide open. It was really exciting to do something like that.
Road trips and sort of hitting the road, it's something we've talked about a lot. Is there anywhere that you want to go next? Like anywhere that you haven't been, it's been on your bucket list for forever, even from a tourism perspective?
Yeah, so many places. I think top of the list is South America. I've been lucky to go to Costa Rica and Mexico and bits of Central America, but I've never been further south than that. And yeah, it intrigues me as a place. And both as a musician and also just as a human being,
Oh, of course. One of the songs that I loved was Why Can't I Change, and it sort of repeats that refrain. When you sort of look at the past 10 years of you making music, what would you say is the most necessary change that you've had to make, or one of the most difficult changes that you've had to make to be able to make this career work?
Yeah, I think it's, funnily enough, I think it's the ability to change. I think that's, ironically, the most important. I think actually adapting constantly, because nothing ever stays the same, really, and you have to kind of move with it. And whatever it is, whether it's busking in the street, whether it's playing in a stadium or a big festival, you have to, I think, as a musician, be able to adapt from day to day, from year to year, from album to album. You have to be able to kind of move with the way it's going, and I think that's certainly one of the most important things to be able to do.
And a nice sort of anecdote to that in the same song was, I find it so strange after all these years, I'm still more or less the same, that, despite changes, there is still a core there that remains, that has to be there for you to be Mike and Passenger.
For sure, and that goes for everyone. I think that's probably one of the weirdest things about, growing older and aging is that, yes, you learn stuff, you hopefully become a little wiser, a little smarter about how you go about things, but fundamentally you're still the same idiot that you were when you were 5 years old. Well, I certainly am, but yeah.
I'll sign on to that too. We've talked a lot about this album, Runaway. Listeners, it's time for you to go do that. Just listen to it. My last question for you, Mike, who are you listening to right now? Who's been spinning in the van?
Well, I'm lucky enough to be joined on the road by a guy called Ken Yates. He's from Toronto, and he, every year there's sort of 2 or 3 artists usually that really sort of grab my attention, and Ken was certainly one of them. And he's got a beautiful record called Huntsville. He's an independent artist. He's a fantastic songwriter, lyricist, and he's not a bad guy as well. So he's definitely my hot pick.
Wonderful. Well, Ken Yates, Passenger, those are the 2 things that you need to listen to. Mike from Passengers for joining me today. Thank you so much for the time.
Pleasure. Thanks, man.